Hello guys, welcome to my basement, but also my YouTube channel. And today, I'm going to be talking all about fishing, and mainly about fishing during the coronavirus and how it can help us, and about teaching maybe beginners how to fish if they've never been fishing before. So, let's get right into this. So, there's many problems with the coronavirus pandemic going on. Many people, including myself, are stuck at home most of the time without anything to do, and this can lead to boredom and isolation. Now, fishing can actually help with this, and this gives you an activity that you can do, and you go out and experience nature. So, first off, we need to talk about what is fishing. So, fishing, according to the dictionary here, is the activity of catching fish, either for food or as a sport. So that sums it up right there. If you go out and catch fish, that's fishing. And I'm going to talk all about fishing today, as I already said. So I don't know why I'm repeating myself. Now, fishing is actually considered safe during the coronavirus pandemic. And I'm actually going to read a little bit off my Chromebook here off the North Carolina Wildlife website. And here it says, individuals using shared or outdoor spaces when outside their residence must at all times and as reasonably as possible maintain social distancing of at least 6 feet from any other person with the exception of family or household members. It also says down here, hunting, fishing, boating, and many other wildlife-associated activities can be accomplished in compliance with those requirements. So, make sure, guys, if you're going to go out and fishing and hunting and other fun stuff to do outside, it's legal as long as you maintain the social distancing. Now, fishing is good for the environment. There's many people out there saying, fishing, it ain't good for the environment. You're just going to kill all the fish, and our population's going to fall apart, and then global warming is going to happen, and all that. But actually, it's good for the environment. If you think about it, ancient long times ago, people fished. Like the Native Americans, they fished. Remember when the Indians taught the Pilgrims, they taught them how to put fish carcasses with their corn. So that shows you that the Indians and Native Americans, they fished. But fishing helped with population control. If we didn't fish, many fish species would be overrun, and then there wouldn't be enough resources for all the fish to eat, and many of them would die. So every time you go fishing, you don't need to keep every fish you catch, but whenever you go fishing, you can keep the ones that are legal and your daily limit of that fish, and it's perfectly fine. It's good for the environment. Now, during this coronavirus pandemic, many people can't get to the grocery store as much as often, and fishing can help out with that. There's many good fish species to eat, including trout, bluegill, sunfish, crappie, catfish, white bass, and even, regular bass like smallmouth and largemouth. I'm sure there's several other species that I'm forgetting. But this would be a great source of food. And this is much better, I think, for you than going out and getting some frozen chicken or fish from the grocery store, because you know where your food comes from. It's actually native to the water. Now, before you go fishing and buy a fishing pole and everything, you gotta get your fishing license. If you're over, I believe, 16 years of age. Because it is illegal to go fishing without a fishing license if you are over 16. But if you're under 16, you can go fishing, no problem whatsoever. You just have to make sure that you don't do anything illegal, like keep more than your daily limit, or keep undersized fish and litter and stuff like that, because it makes fishermen look bad when we do stuff like that. Now I'm going to be talking about places to go fishing. So there's rivers, lakes, ponds, small streams, big streams, creeks, and even the ocean, which I don't live near the ocean, but some of you that do, you can go fishing at the ocean, which also I think you have to have a saltwater license. Alright guys, yeah, if you're over 16, you have to have a saltwater fishing license. But here guys, you gotta be careful. Whenever you go fishing, especially ponds and rivers and lakes, you don't want to go fishing on somebody's private property, especially ponds, because if somebody owns a pond, they spend a bunch of money to stock their fish in there, and they don't want you catching them and then keeping them. So don't go fishing at any private property or any private ponds, because that will get you in some trouble. So during this coronavirus pandemic, there's lots of places that have been shut down that you can't go fishing anymore, but there's still a few that are open, and I'm going to tell you about some of them. And this is for, I'm saying Western North Carolina, Marion, North Carolina in there. So there's the Catawba River Greenway in Marion, North Carolina. There's Armstrong Creek. There's Lake James. You can still fish it if you have a boat or kayaks or something like that, or you can fish on the bank. And then you can fish at private ponds and stuff as long as you have permission from the owner. So if you know the owner, you can contact the owner and ask if you can go fishing there. So you can still fish in those types of places. So that gives you a few options of places to go fishing. So maybe you guys can go out and go fishing, just maintain social distancing. Now I'm going to talk about different types of rods and reels for fishing. So this is where it kind of gets a little bit complicated. There's several different kinds of rod and reels, and some rods and reels don't actually even have a rod and reel, like I'll show you here in a second. But I'm going to go get the main different rods and reels that fishermen use. Alright guys, so there's 3 different main types of rod and reels. First off, so grab it here, is the push button. Now this is what most beginner anglers use. It's what I used. And I'm going to be showing you guys how to cast this here in a little bit. But this is by far the easiest rod and reel to use. Push the button, cast it here. I'll explain this more in a little bit. Next is the spinning rod and reel. So this is a spinning reel, and it's a little bit more complicated than the push button reel. I'll explain how to cast this here in a little bit. And you got to be sure, if you have a spinning reel, you need a spinning rod. And I'm going to explain the differences here in a casting and push button rod with a spinning rod. So this is for beginner to intermediate to advanced fishermen. So some of you will probably be able to pick up and learn this to cast this really fast. Some of you might take a little bit of time. But next is the most advanced rod and reel. And it is a bait caster. Now I'm going to explain here in a little bit why this is the most, I guess you could say, difficult to use. But I'll explain how to cast it here in a little bit. It is much more difficult to use. And you can actually, with all of these rod and reels, you can get something that's called a bird's nest. And that's when all the line gets tangled up everywhere. But especially with this. And it usually happens right there where the line is. I almost forgot. I got one more rod and reel, like I said, that doesn't really have a reel. And this is called the cane pole. Now some of you guys may not be able to get out and buy a fishing pole, but I'm sure you can make these out of big limbs and stuff. All you need is a piece of river cane or a big limb that's durable, that won't break if a fish gets on it. about a 2-aught hook. I'll explain the hooks here in a little bit. And some pretty good, I guess you could say, string that's pretty strong. So if you get a big fish, it won't break off. And this is, you don't really cast this, but I'll show you how to use it as well. And you can catch fish on it, that's for sure. I think this is what they used back in the old days before fishing poles were even invented. Alright guys, so I'm going to be explaining the differences between a spinning rod and reel and a push button rod and reel and a baitcaster rod and reel. So, as you can see on this push button rod and reel, the baitcaster is about the same. You have the reel up here and the eyelets, these things that the line goes through, they're on top. So that's with a bait casting and push button rod and reel. But if you buy a spinning rod and reel, and, ow, there's a hook on there. You hold it, you can see the reel's upside down, and so are the eyelets. So you actually want to hold this upside down whenever you use it. And if you're going to buy just the rod and reel separately and you buy a spinning reel, then you're going to want to buy a spinning rod. And another way you can tell it's a spinning rod is the first eyelet here is much bigger. I'll try to get it from this angle. Much bigger than that of a casting rod. As you can see, it's pretty small. It's right there. Then I'm going to show you on a bait caster, which is probably even smaller than that. Here's the bait casting rod. It's pretty small. That's also very helpful if you're going to want to buy a rod cover. You have to buy, if you want to cover your spinning rod. Here, I'll show you what a rod cover looks like real quick. So here's a rod cover. It goes on your rod. But if you're gonna want to buy if you want a cover for your spinning rod and reel, then you have to buy a spinning rod and reel cover. Because like I said earlier, this first eyelet is much bigger. I'll show you. This won't fit on here. It goes to the first eyelets pretty well. But then, you see right here, it can't fit over this first eyelet. So you're going to have to buy one with a bigger end on it right there. So this is just a helpful tip you can use whenever you're buying a rod and reel and a cover. Alright guys, so the first fishing rod and reel we're going to cast is the push button. As you can see right here, it has a button on the front to push. And what I'm throwing right now, it's not nothing you're going to throw to fish with this kind of rod and reel. I have a 2-ounce lead sinker, but this is just to cast it pretty far. And to cast this, all you need to do is to push this down. You can see. And now, all you're going to do is cast it and let go of that button once it's in the air. So I'll do this a few times to show you guys. So again, all you do, push the button, hold the button. Now, what you're going to do, let it in the air and let go of the button. And then reel in a little bit. And then you can, there you go, you got it. Alright guys, next is the spinning rod and reel. So this one, it's a little bit more complicated than your push button reel, but not by too much. So let's see here, get it situated. Okay, so you can see out front here, you have this thing right here. It's a little clasp. Now to cast it, all you need to do is you see your line comes out right here on the clasp. Put your finger on that line and hold it like a trigger almost. Then you're going to want to, I'll show you, I'll flip it this way. Flip your clasp up, and all you need to do is kind of like a push button. Sling it forward and let go of your clasp. Let's reel it in. Alright guys, I'm going to show you one more time. So here, you have your line, and pinch it where it comes out of the clasp. Now, flip your clasp up while still holding your line. All you're going to do, it's like the push button like I said. You're going to sling it, and then right after you sling it, let go. So maybe actually a little bit before. So let's see if I can do it without hitting you guys. Alright guys, so here's the last rod and reel setup we're going to cast, and it's I'd say the most difficult for sure. And it's the bait caster. Now, as you can see right here, it has an open face on it right here. And the spool on here is free spinning whenever you push the button right here. And it can spin, it spins on its own. So, if you're starting out fishing with a bait caster, you can look on this side. Let's see if I can get it to the camera. Right there, the brake system. You're going to want to put it all the way on max. So, see that there's pointing to max. That way, you're not going to get as many bird's nests starting out. Another thing, we have this little red knob right there. That's going to help. And you're going to want your lure to fall about half the rate of gravity. So right now, it's falling about half the rate of gravity. We're starting out. And you're going to want to twist this knob to adjust that. So here, if I twist it forward, then it falls. It doesn't fall at all. It falls really, really slow. But then if I twist it too far backwards, it falls way too fast. So you're going to want to keep it in the middle about half the rate of gravity, which I don't know what that rate exactly is. I'll put a picture, look right somewhere over here, and you'll see the rate of gravity. So right, a little bit less than that. Now when you guys do this, when you're starting out, you can't cast anywhere as far as if you put your brakes down some. But this is how you learn to cast it. So remember, push your bell. Not your bell, your button. Hold your thumb on the spool right here. What you're going to do, throw it forward, put your thumb right on it before it hits the ground or the water, either one, if you're starting out practicing on the water or on the ground. So now I'm going to turn the brakes about to where I can do it now. I've practiced this bait caster for a while, on it for a while. Sure. I'll try to get it farther than that. I can't get it too far because there's a few cars around me. But barely just whipping it with your wrist stick and send it, I'd say 20 feet. Bait casters can definitely, bait casters and spinning rods and reels can definitely cast much farther than push buttons. But that's how you cast a bait caster. Now I'm going to show you, like I said, what a bird's nest is. There you go. That's a bird's nest. Now with bait casters, how you're going to want to get your bird's nest out. You see the line coming through right here? It's going to want to pull it out. Pull till you get to the end of the bird's nest, which sometimes can be a long time. Now to use a cane pole, you don't really cast the cane pole. All you need is your cane pole, like I said earlier, and about anywhere from a size 2-watt all the way to a size 8 hook. And I'll explain hook sizes here in a little bit. Just tie your hook on Put some worms or whatever bait you're using, put it in the water. Now you can use a bobber if you want to, and once your bobber starts going under the water, just give your fish the hook set. So jerk your rod straight up, and that'll hook into the fish's mouth. Alright, so now I'll be talking about different types of fishing line, and there's three main types. The first type of fishing line is monofilament, and that's a single strand of nylon and often referred to simply as mono. So the pros of mono are it's has good knot strength and suitable for a wide range of common fishing knots. It's smooth and easy to cast. It has low visibility and has good abrasion resistance. It floats, and it's definitely the cheapest out of the three different kinds of line. A second kind of line is fluorocarbon. It's a single strand of polyvinylidene. I'm going to say that fluoride. And the pros of this are that it's extremely low visibility. It sinks because it's denser than water. It has low stretch, has pretty good abrasion resistance, and it's resistant to UV light deterioration. It also has good knot strength and does not absorb water. Some of the cons of fluorocarbon are that it's stiffer than mono, especially in higher strengths. Its sinking quality is not that helpful in all angling situations, and it costs much more than monofilament, about 50% more. And the third type of line is braid. It's fused or braided strands of ultra high molecular weight polyethylene and commonly referred to as braid or braided line. The pros are that there's no or extremely low stretch. The diameter is much less than mono for the same amount of pound. It does not absorb water. It floats and resistant to UV deterioration. The cons are that it doesn't have the best abrasion resistance. The color fades over time. You can only use certain knots to braid. It's highly visible in the water. Line tangles are difficult to deal with, and it costs more than mono. Out of the three, I say fluorocarbon has probably cost the most, then braid, then mono. But if you're just starting out, I say 8 to 10 pound mono is the best choice.
This is the clinch knot, a very simple way, very strong way to tie any hook to any kind of fishing line. Very simple. Put the fishing line through the hook. Give yourself plenty of slack. We're going to make a big pinch right here, so you have a big hole to go through in just a second. We're going to go around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times around, and then back through this hole that we created right there. Okay, I'm going to hold the tag end, and I'm going to pull on the standing line, and the knot is going to cinch down, just like the name implies, right there. All the barrels will be parallel to one another, not over the top of one another, and if your knot looks like that, you're good to go. You can catch anything with that knot.
Alright guys, so now you know a lot about fishing. Next, what I'm going to talk about is different lures. And now different species of fish have different lures that you fish with. If you're just starting out fishing, then I'd say you want to use bait, not lures at first, because lures can be more complicated than bait, such as worms. I'm going to show you what you're going to need to fish with worms. So, grab my box of hooks and weights here. And here is a hook that you would use for worms. And these are actually bait holder hooks. If I zoom in the camera here and get it to focus on this, there are actually little notches in the hook right there. And that's to hold your bait onto the hook. And this, you're going to want to get, if you're fishing for smaller fish with worms, anywhere from a number 8 to about a number 12 hook. And this brings me to the hook size. I'll put a chart of hook size about somewhere in here. You'll see right now. But if you're talking about number hooks in the numbers, they range anywhere from, I think, size 1 to like size 12 or 14 or 16. And size 1 goes from, the bigger the number, the smaller the hook. So this is about a number, let's see, 6, 8, or 10, I can't tell. I'm not the best at judging hook size. And for fishing for bluegill and different stuff, what you're going to want to use is probably number 8 to 10, 6 hooks, like I said. And then it brings us to the other size. If you hear aught in a hook, so a 1/0 hook, a 2/0 hook, a 3/0 hook, all the way to 20/0 hooks, which are used to catch big sharks and stuff. If that's, the bigger the number, the bigger the hook. So remember, if they don't have aught in the name, just a size hook, the bigger the number, the smaller the hook. But if they're an aught hook, the bigger the number, the bigger the hook. So, like I said, if you're just starting out with fishing, the easiest thing to fish with is just a hook right here, number 10, 6, 8 hook, and some worms. I'd say the next most easiest lure to use, if I can get one out here, is probably a spinner. And not a bass spinnerbait. I'll show you the difference here in a second. These are what you use to catch trout. You can catch bass with them too, small bass. If I can get one unhooked here. And this is what a spinner looks like. And I'll explain how to use a spinner. So, to use a spinner, it's really simple. All you do is tie this on, cast out, and then just start retrieving. And this little blade right here, the black part that I'm holding on to, spins around and gets the fish's attention, and then they see the rest of the bait and decide to go eat it. It resembles sometimes bugs, or if they were hatchery raised fish pellets. And like I said, these are the next easiest to use from just worms, I believe. Alright guys, I couldn't find my bass spinnerbaits. I think I've misplaced the box with them. But I'll pop a picture right about there or somewhere that you can see. And there's a difference. The one that I just showed you the picture of, the one that I wasn't holding, is for bass. And they can be harder to use, different ways to retrieve them and stuff. But like I said, the next easiest thing to use for worms is spinners. And then after that is probably little crappy jigs and grubs and stuff. So I'll show you some of them. So here's a curly tail worm, and this can be used to catch crappie, small bass. You could catch probably trout with it, sunfish, and these actually go on jig heads. And I'll show you. Here's a jig head. This is what a jig head looks like. And I'm going to show you one that's pre-rigged. That's already, here's, so as you can see, and these are next easiest. And what you're going to want to do with these is you can just retrieve them back in like a spinnerbait, or either you can just throw in wherever you think the fish are at, which I'll explain where fish live here in just a second, and twitch it up a little bit, maybe reel it in the slack and the line, twitch it a few times, retrieve it a little bit. And a lot of people make it sound like fishing is a hard thing to do, and it's actually not that hard doing this kind of fishing. And it's pretty simple. You can actually get a spinner to attach to one of these jig heads with a grub on there. I'll show you one right here. If I can get my jig head to adjust. And like I said earlier, the spinner part right here, the blade, it gets the fish's attention, and then they see this. Whenever you can just straight retrieve this, and the fish, you'll probably catch some fish on it. And next, I'm going to be talking about bass lures, and there's thousands of, well, any types of fishing lures, but bass lures, it can be hard to figure out what you're going to need. And that's kind of bass fishing is for intermediate to advanced people, maybe not beginners. And I'm not going to explain how to use each of these baits. I'm just going to show you different examples. So here is one right here. This is a crankbait. It's a smaller crankbait. This can be used for catching bass and bigger bluegill and sunfish. And it has the lip on here. I'll explain how this works. And whenever you're retrieving it, it comes in and makes it wobble like a wounded bait fish. The fish that the bass or other fish eat. Then it has these treble hooks on there. Treble hook means it has 3 hooks put in one. And a fish, let's say this, my hand right here is a fish, it goes, and I'm not going to hook myself because that would hurt, and gets caught on the hooks right there, and you get it. They make several kinds. Here is a grasshopper crankbait. It's pretty cool. Then they make lipless crankbaits, which kind of make the same motions and stuff, but they're a little bit different. And then, let's see here, there's jerk baits. And then there's soft plastics, which there's thousands and thousands of soft plastics. That material, those baits that I showed earlier, those jigs with the curly tail on them, it's made out about the same material. And I'll show you here. Here's some lizards, soft plastic lizards for bass fishing. Here is some more lizards. These are actually stick baits or Senkos or wacky worms, whatever you want to call them. Some more Senkos. And then I actually have some swimming flukes. And right here is a swim bait. And for beginner fishermen, you don't want to just jump into doing bass fishing. Like I said, I say that fishing with spinners and worms and maybe curly tail grub is will catch you fish if you're starting out. But then as you start progressing and getting better at fishing, you can start moving into bass lures and different stuff. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to be talking about here is where fish live in the water where you're fishing at. So, fish, they're kind of like us. They like to have a place to live, if you know what I mean. Like, so, if you're going to be going fishing, you don't just want to cast out in the middle of the water. You're going to want to cast where the fish live. Now, I'm going to name some places where fish live that you can probably see whenever you go fishing. So if there's cover in the water, like a fallen tree or some rocks, fish like to congregate there. If there's big changes, like a dip in the bottom of the bed of the river or lake, a dip, and there's a deep spot, fish would like to live there. Points, wherever a piece of land comes to a point, the water right there, fish love to live there. So next time you go fishing, or if it's your first time going fishing, make sure just to look for cover in the water, rocks, or a dip in the change of the level of water, or where the land comes to a point, and that will be a good place for fishing. And now let me get my notes here and see what I'm supposed to tell you. So now it's time for you to go fish. I think I've explained most of everything about what basic fishing is. Oh, one more thing. If you do catch a fish and you can't get the hook out with your hands, if it's a regular hook like I showed you, like a bait holder hook or a treble hook, you can try to work the hook out of the fish's mouth. Or you can get yourself a pair of regular needle nose pliers or a multi-tool with pliers on them. And while you're holding the fish, pretend I have a fish here, and there's a hook in its mouth. And let's say it swallowed this treble hook. Well, it didn't swallow it. This is hooked right there. All you want to do is work your hook, pull down and out to get the hook out. Make sure you go down there, click the subscribe button. It's the little red button that says subscribe, and it's free, costs nothing. Click the little notification bell, turn on all notification. That just lets you know whenever I post a video. Click a like and leave a comment suggesting video ideas, or just leave me a comment telling me something, asking questions, and I'll try to get back and answer if you leave me a comment.